Tipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, how quickly they forget over on that side about the people that put them into government. How quickly they forget about the hard-working New Zealanders who pay their taxes, who are doing it tough, and who they now talk about as if they're simply numbers. They forget about the personal lives that lie behind those numbers. So when Bill English comes down to the House and talks about the increase in unemployment, he talks about the numbers, but he forgets the people that are behind that. He forgets the people and their families and their mortgages and their rents and their supermarket shopping bills and their power bills, the people who are doing it tough. This government has already forgotten about them. It's forgotten about them because it's interested in only one thing. It's interested in rewarding the people that are like them, the people with money, the people who back them. That's where this government has been focusing its effort. It's focused its tax cuts on the people on the highest incomes, while the people on the lowest incomes, and not just the people on the lowest incomes, but ordinary, hard-working New Zealanders, middle New Zealand, they get clobbered with an increase in GST that more than cancels out the tax cuts that they have received under this national government. They get clobbered. The people in the middle and the people at the bottom of the heap, they get clobbered by this government, by the Paris Hilton economics, espoused by people like Wayne Mapp. They get absolutely clobbered by the national government, while the people on the highest incomes get rewarded. And so that's the first message that this government is sending through the speech this year. They don't care about the people at the bottom, they don't care about the people in the middle, they only care about the people at the top. Bill English inherited an economy in very good shape, and he set about running it into the ground. We had record low debt when Bill English became the Minister of Finance. What did he say? He said, this is the rainy day we've been saving for, because the previous government saved. It paid down the debt. And what had the government done? They gave out the tax cuts to the people who needed their support the least, and now they're borrowing, $300 million a week to pay for the tax cuts for those at the top of the heap. They inherited record low unemployment. That's either the first or the second lowest unemployment rate in the developed world they had when National became the government. And what have they done? Well, they've turned that around. They've turned that around well and truly. They wanted to catch up with Australia. This government were going to catch up with Australia. Well, they've caught up with Australia in respect of unemployment. They've caught up with Australia in respect of unemployment. We now have a much higher unemployment rate than the Australians did. So what's their solution to New Zealand's economy, to the fact that we're borrowing $300 million a week? Sell some stuff. Let's sell some stuff. We're going to sell the SOEs. They're going to sell the energy SOEs. They're going to privatise ACC. They're going to privatise the prisons. Let's sell things, because that's what you do. When you can't afford to pay the mortgage, you sell the house. But you can only sell the house once, and then where do you live once you've sold the house? So that's not a solution to our economic woes and our financial difficulties. Don't sell stuff, because you can only sell it once. And what will the government do? What will Bill English do once he's sold it that first time? Actually, Bill English won't need to worry about it, because he'll be long gone by the time that eventuality rolls around. Mr Speaker, this is a government that are clobbering people at the bottom. They're clobbering the people in the middle. John Key said in his speech that a society could be judged by how it treats the most vulnerable. Well, let's judge this government on that. Let's judge this government on that sentiment expressed in John Key's speech. Children are pretty vulnerable. What's the government done for children? Well, it's cut funding out of early childhood education. And as a result, kids are either going to have to not participate in early childhood education, or they're going to have a lower quality of early childhood education, or their parents are going to have to pay more for it. Those are the only three outcomes from the government's funding cuts to early childhood education. Pay more, get less, or simply get a lower quality. Those are the things that will come out of their cuts to early childhood education. They cut home help for elderly people. They're vulnerable, so what's the government done for them? Cut their home help hours. They've cut support to some of the most vulnerable people. Victims of sexual abuse have had their cover under ACC eroded away under this national government. They cut the training incentive allowance for people who are trying to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get themselves back into the workforce. Mr Speaker, it's a government with no plan. It's a government with no plan. But actually, what they are very good at doing is spin. And nothing illustrates their spin more than what they have been doing in ACC. Because it's very clear that from the day they came into office, this government had an agenda to privatise our ACC scheme. And they have set about trying to destroy the credibility of our ACC scheme in order to justify more cuts and privatisation. ACC is one of the things that when people come from overseas, they look at our ACC and they look at our Farm Act and they say, I wish we had schemes like that. Because they take the lawyers and they take the big pharmaceutical drug money out of the health system and mean that health dollars actually get spent on health care, and this government wants to erode that and they want to do away with that. So how do they do it? First of all, they attack ACC's credibility. They talk up a crisis. They manufacture a crisis. ACC does not have a financial crisis. In fact, it's on track to have a $2 billion surplus this year. So there is no crisis, despite what the government are trying to do. But what are they doing? They're hiking up the ACC levies. Hike up the ACC levies so that people get annoyed with ACC. They didn't need to hike up the levies, but they did it anyway. Then they cut the entitlements. 90% of sexual abuse victims have been denied cover for counselling. 90% of sexual abuse victims have been denied cover through ACC for counselling. Government have got nothing to say about that because they know that if we judge them on the sentiment that John Key expressed about judging a society by how it treats the most vulnerable, there aren't many more people more vulnerable in society than someone who has been the victim of sexual abuse. And yet 90% of them, under this government, cannot access counselling. 90% of them have been turned down from counselling because of this government's cuts in ACC. So why are they doing all this? They're doing all this because they want to privatise it, because they want to open it up to competition. Why do they want to do that? Well, Merrill Lynch. Now, Merrill Lynch connected to the government in any way? I can't think. I think Merrill Lynch may have some passing connection to the government. Merrill Lynch let the cat out of the bag when they said that privatisation of ACC under a national government was going to result in $200 million a year of windfall profits for the private insurance industry. $200 million a year of money being transferred from hard-working, tax-paying, levy-paying New Zealanders to the coffers of the private insurance companies. That's why the government wants to privatise ACC. That's why they want to do it. They want to increase the profits of the private insurance companies. They want to do that by opening up ACC to privatisation. That will result not in money going into healthcare, not into money going into injury prevention and rehabilitation, but money going into the bottom line, the profits of the private insurance companies. And of course, what will the private insurance companies do? Well, of course, they will erode cover and they will erode entitlements. Any New Zealander who has made a claim to an insurance company, whether it's for a burglary or for a car accident, will know that those insurance companies will screw them down for every possible dollar they can. And that is what every New Zealander now faces under a privatised ACC scheme when they have an accident. So when they're at their most vulnerable, they're going to be on the phone to a private insurance company who is going to try and screw them out of every possible dollar that they can. I think that's not good enough, and the Labour Party thinks that's not good enough, and that is the reason why we will oppose tooth and nail the national government's plan to privatise the ACC scheme, because we have a good ACC scheme despite what the government are trying to do to ruin its credibility. And we know that. Why do we know that? Because PricewaterhouseCoopers were given a brief. Go anywhere in the world and find us a scheme that is better and cheaper. Do you know how many they could find? Not one. PricewaterhouseCoopers could not find a single scheme anywhere else in the world that was cheaper or more efficient or provided better cover than ACC. Than the scheme. Rubbish. That's not right, because I'll tell you about the scheme in 1999. The scheme we had in 1999, partially privatised. What happened to one of the insurance companies that was offering cover under that, HIH? It went broke, and the Australian government had to bail it out for $500 million of Australian taxpayer dollars when it's bailing out one of the schemes that was delivering cover under National's privatised ACC scheme. That's what we can expect. They will privatise the profits and socialise the losses. That's what the government want to do to the ACC scheme, and they're going to have a fight on their hands because the Labor Party is opposed to the privatisation of ACC, and we're not going to have a bar of it.